Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. And this week we had some information, sort of the first teaser of what's going to be coming up in the new version of the core supporter packs. So these are not the equivalent of the current Sentinel Overlord pack and the like. These are the equivalent of the Crucible series, so that's the Crucible, the Empyrean, the Vanguard, the Pit Fighter, and the Assassin packs that are available. The ones that have the higher price tags and the physical goods. So the current versions, the Crucible one has has some amazing prints of the 5 different packs. The Empyrean has a Path of Exile hoodie, and one down from that, the Vanguard has a Path of Exile shirt from memory. So we've gone with something completely different for the next tier, and this is sort of being teased a bit early because obviously I think GGG want to have a section of the player base sort of saving up in earnest for these. And that's where they announced this week the Lord's Labyrinth Path of Exile gamebook. Now, the concept of a gamebook is basically a choose-your-own-adventure style book, which, again, I think a lot of the audience here may be too young to really remember when they were big. So if you flash back to the early 1990s or the late 1980s, it was quite expensive to buy video games. When I'm saying expensive, I'm talking about a Nintendo Entertainment System game, so a NES game like the original Mario Brothers. I don't know what they cost in the United States, but in Australia you are looking at paying 80 US dollars. Oh, sorry, 80 Australian dollars for them. And then the Super NES ones were more expensive again. You were looking 100 to 110 Australian for the Super Nintendo games. So as a result, interactive entertainment was expensive, but less interactive entertainment, at least in the form of books, was much cheaper. You know, prices for books were pretty similar to what they are today. And so you'd find books that aim to use a unique chapter structure in order to basically be an interactive form of entertainment. And that's what this Lord's Labyrinth is going to be based upon. But then layering on top of that, so that was the concept of the Choose Your Own Adventure books, which were hugely popular when I was both a kid and a teenager. But then the next tier after that came about when they added in some basic elements of role-playing games. And you had, amongst the famous ones, you had the Fighting Fantasy game books. I recall one that's not listed in sort of Google searches top list, and that was Spectral Stalkers, which was my favourite. Spectral Stalkers had a lot of feel. It came out in 1991, and it had a lot of feel along the lines of Magic the Gathering's lore, where you're an ordinary person, but you come across an object, an artifact, that allows you to transport between worlds into all sorts of different weird and wonderful worlds. Very similar to the lore concept of planeswalking from Magic the Gathering. And you end up going through this, extensive adventure where you're being hunted down because the evil Archmage Globus wants to get control of this incredible artifact to use himself because he's currently stuck on one particular plane. And he knows there's all these other planes out there ripe for the conquering. And in these books, generally speaking, what would happen is you'd read them through normally up until maybe 6 or 7 pages in, and then it would tell you, make a decision. If you choose option A, go to chapter number XYZ. If you choose option B, go to chapter number ZYX. And then you'd sort of keep going through, and then occasionally you'd have combat encounters that would be in the way. There was another series that was really popular as well, Lone Wolf, which had some excellent books in it. And may actually have been, I think these two came out about the same time as each other. So, the Lord's Labyrinth Path of Exile gamebook is an attempt by GGG to bring some of that feel to a physical book based around the lore of Path of Exile. So the idea is that you're Waylon of Ezimir, you're an Ezimite slave, you're captured as a child and raised as a gladiator, and you're offered a chance to undergo the trials of Emperor Azaro and the Labyrinth. As Waylon, you get to make the decisions as to how the story plays out. Choices are yours and yours alone, and some will lead to death, some will lead to glory, and all will traverse the darkest paths of Reclass Accursed Past. So this will be available for higher tiers of the new core supporter packs, as we were mentioning before, and it's only going to be English. At least that's the current plan. But the artwork for it is absolutely stunning, and I'll just give a bit of a sense of this. So here's the Goddess of Justice that will be on the front cover. Then here's just some basic information about how gamebooks in general work. You'll need to have 2 6-sided dice for playing this, potentially 3 actually. Here's your character sheet, which I assume you'll be able to photocopy and use as many of them as you need to. And there's this concept of the Ascendancy, which is really interesting because a lot of these effects have synergy with each other. So for instance, Thirst for Blood is more likely to proc, considerably more likely to proc, if you have Master of the Arena. And you'll have an interesting decision to make. For instance, if you roll 6, 4, and 4, do you keep 4 and 6 and have a attack strength of 10, whatever that means? Or do you keep 4 and 4, gain 1 life, and have an attack strength of 8? And that'll be an interesting decision that you'll have to make that is really difficult to say what the correct choice will be. And that's sort of decision I think that makes for interesting gameplay in something like this, especially given that if you do have Thirst for Blood and Master of the Arena, you're actually very likely to get at least 2 of a kind. So there are 216 different ways that you can roll 3 6-sided dice, and of those, only 120 of them have all 3 of them different. So that means that 96 times in 216, which when we divide by 6, that's 16 in 36. That's a 4 in 9 chance that you'll be able to use Thirst for Blood to gain life when you're attacking. And given that you've only got 10 life, that's pretty significant. So that's just one interesting sort of combination with the Ascendancy node. I assume it'll work the same way as it does in the real game. So at certain points, i.e. when you beat an Azaro counter, you'll be able to pick up one and then one of these major nodes and the point on the way as a freebie. So here's some more of the artwork. This is the courtyard outside the labyrinth. This is obviously a room with the horrible Roombas. And this is, I think that is Izaro's gargoyle leap slamming onto you. And yeah, you can see there's some pretty damn impressive looking stuff there. Anyways, this is something that I'm reasonably excited for. We'll have to see how well it turns out in practice, but I think this has a lot of potential. It's also something they're going to be doing a little bit differently, where this is going to be a supporter pack timed exclusive. So previously, everything in the supporter packs, with the exception of designing divination cards commissions, everything has been a limited time offer, whereas this is going to be available for sale after the fact, but that's not going to be until the core supporter packs rotate again. Anyways, that's just a little bit of news that's come out. I thought people might be interested. If you've got any questions, fire away. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there.